Yes.
Another part of that anticipatory grief, when there's a family member that you know is maybe legally dead, and the family has to make the decision to unplug him.
Yeah.
And then you have family members that think the Lord is gonna resurrect them and everything, but legally, and they told you that they don't want that quality of life, but you make the decision to unplug them, and then the rest of the family has major issues with it.
So you're talking about you're the person that's having to unplug and everybody else has got the challenge. Yeah. So, and this is where if you're in a scenario like that, I would encourage you, and sometimes people discount this, but I'm not being braggadocious, but in some ways I am. I can come into a room and talk to anybody. And talk to them. I don't have nothing to lose. I mean, I'm gonna talk to you like I pastor you. And if you don't like it, then you ask me to leave. But before I leave, there's somebody in that room who's gonna appreciate what I just said, because somebody in that room could not say it, but I can say it. But I'll say it in a way that's going to be palatable. And what I'm saying, and I said all that to say this, is that if you're in a setting like that, and if there are some good chaplains in that area, and you as an individual can have a conversation, if you're going to be the person that's going to be responsible for pulling the plug and you're going to have to make that decision, I would have a side conversation with a chaplain and tell them the serious nature and explain the dynamics. And if they're skilled and gifted, they can come in and help that process be a whole lot easier. All right? And that's going to be an exact science, but it will be a sense of support for you in that room, and you won't feel like you're alone. And ask for him or her to be present when that goes down. And in that case here, as your pastor, you ask for me to be there as well. If you're in that scenario, and if you're in a contentious, conflictual, what have you, with the family members, I have no problem. You calling me, say, Pastor, it's going to be hot, whatever the case may be. Can you come in? Sure, I don't have no problem with that. And provide a word of encouragement and say stuff without saying it, and say it directly to people that need to say it, even if that means pulling the person to the side. Hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to check on you. And because I can be in the room for 2 minutes and know who the players are. But I think you need to have support when you go in, because now you're public enemy number one. And you all by yourself, and you being ready to unplug my daddy. And you're going to live with that. I just heard something here recently in my own family. I'm like, how can you blame this person when in fact you couldn't do it? It needed to be done. Like you said, that person was dead. There was no quality of life. And I say to people, I ask people, and I said, now, do you believe in the power of God? Yes. Most times they say yes. Do you believe that he can do all things? Back to your point. And they say yes. Do you believe that he created heaven and earth? Yes. Okay. Then you believe with me that if I unplug this person, that God can keep him alive, right? But I'll ask them a series of questions before I get to that final question. So now your trust should not stop at these machines. So if you believe in that, then you believe that God can keep that person alive. And then also, you don't want to be the person that is known to be the selfish one, because you're trying to keep them alive for whatever reason. And sometimes that can be your own personal guilt, because conversations that you have not had with that individual. But you're right. You can become public enemy number one, but the way you can help your case is to find enough spiritual support, or even those people that are on that floor, for you in the process, so that you have that support when it's time to pull the plug. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
One thing I think we might overlook is that in some cases, some people are already praying that the good Lord take them. You might not realize the person has already been praying and already woke up to come and get them.
Mm-hmm.
But that happens a lot too.
Yeah, you're right. But here's the only problem is the folk in the room ain't heard that conversation. You know what I'm saying? You're exactly right. The person that's on that bed is saying, you know, Lord, it's over with, it's done. I'm not gonna have quality of life. Remove me from this suffering. Da 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 da. Into your back like Jesus, into your hands I commit my spirit. But the problem is people in that room, for some reason, now who were religious going in the room become unreligious and don't believe the power of God. Right? So it's important for us to understand that. But have conversations and have supporters going into that. All right, so ambiguous loss occurs when there's no clear closure, such as the case of dementia or a missing loved one. This uncertainty complicates the grieving process. I know that that's a challenge for many persons who have gone through that. And that is a labor of love beyond a labor of love. I had a person that I pastored in Macon whose husband was a painter, well-known painter in that middle Georgia area. And one of the problems she had, she would have to lock all the doors. She had to lock all the windows. He would manage to find his way out of the house and be somewhere unbeknownst to her, sometimes a day or 2 days at a time, you know, but struggling with dementia and what have you, until she made a decision she needed to put him in a skilled nursing facility because it was beyond her ability and capacity. And that right there, so now you're dealing with a duplicity of loss. The decision to let that person go somewhere, now seems like you're losing that relationship and giving it to someone else. And at the same time, that person's own loss of self-identity and ability to deal with the situation. So you're dealing with all of those factors. But I think the most important thing, most especially in cases of dementia, is to be clear-eyed when it comes to the fact that you are at the extent of your ability and capability to handle this situation and be able to get that person in the best place of care, right? Because it is beyond your capacity. Right? And you need to also, at the same time, have those conversations. If you're married, single, whatever the case may be, family members, have those conversations with them in advance. If I get to this place, I give you permission to go ahead and do X, Y, and Z.
Pastor, it's hard sometimes to try to get, I have a sister that's dealing with dementia, but it's hard sometimes to get people to cooperate with you. When you say have these conversations, there's always an excuse. I'll do it later. You'll do it next week. You'll do it next month. So how in the world can you pin them down to say, okay, we're having this today, and they won't talk, won't open their mouths? How do you deal with that?
You're talking about the Pacific family member?
Yes.
Okay, I'm of the belief that you keep talking about it. Because here's the thing, on the other side of it, you're going to be at a place of guilt because you didn't talk about it. Or you're going to start asking yourself the question, I did not talk about it enough. Maybe I should have went the extra mile. Maybe I should have explored some resources on how to get this. Maybe I need to bring in somebody else beside myself. Because sometimes people will listen to other folks before they will listen to you. So for example, I could be a person in my own family telling these folks, this is what you ought to do. This is what you ought to do all day long. And I know what they ought to do. And they exit out from my conversation 4 or 5 years later. Oh, I decided to do X, Y, and Z. But we had this conversation. I know, but I needed to verify. But I think getting external resources and looking for that arena that people who operate in those capacities on how to have the conversation is the appropriate way to take it. Yes, ma'am.
My sister had used, and for her and for us, it was good because her mind told her when she found out that she had it, and she had had it for about 6 years before, it just really put her down. And the doctor had told us that she had a slow progression to but then when it hit her, she would really be different. In that time of that processing of going on, she went and she did her bit. So we didn't have to deal with her on that part. The part that we did have to deal with her on the end was sometimes she don't talk to you, she wouldn't speak. And no matter what you said to her, if she didn't want to do that, she didn't.
Well, I think it's about just sharing, talking about it, sharing resources until you can't share resources any longer. As long as you know that you've done your part is the most important thing. So let me.
Pastor, let me ask you this. She was saying about getting people to come in, family members to come in and help you with your loved ones, and they make excuses about they got da. But why is it, Pastor? Explain it to me. At the funeral, it's a million people there, but they weren't there when you needed them. Explain it to me, please. I mean, they have no problem.
That's called presentation guilt, and I just made up that term. So I'm going to be present to cover my guilt, and so I'm going to make a big show of things. I ain't done nothing. I ain't helped. I ain't provided no resources. I ain't done a thing. But I got to show everybody that I'm here. So that's my way of saying I did something.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Where are these people coming from?
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. We talked about disenfranchised grief. This deals with the area of certain losses, pet loss, ex-spouse death, miscarriage. I'm actually counseling a woman who lost her baby, death. It's been 2 years now, and she is grappling with that to this day. She currently has 2 children, but she cannot. And now she has built. So her memorial, she's kind of built like a little thing in her house to memorialize her child, and she puts flowers there and everything else. Has been doing that for a long period of time. So it is that's a real loss. Loss of pets is a big one. It's a huge one, more ways than we realize. I had a person that I used to pastor that lost a pet, and you know, back in the day, I'll be honest. So a person called me and said, Pastor, so-and-so just lost a dog. And I was like, I said, and so I'm trying to be kind, compassionate. And I put the phone on me, and I said, you mean you calling me about somebody that lost a dog? And so I had to hold up. I said, okay. But after I heard the dynamics of what the pet meant to her, and everything that she had lost her husband. She had actually lost her husband, and years later she was dating a person, and they were scheduled to get married at some point in time, and he lost him, and so in the process, she had a pet in between. But the pets brought a significant value and meant a lot to them. So I had to regroup, rethink the value and the significance of pets, because they mean a lot to a lot of folks as it relates to their families. All right, let's go to the next one. Coping strategies, coping and seeking support, family and friends, and finding those people who are able to handle your grief. Find those people who are able to handle your pain, and find those people who are able to have no problem with you sharing the same story, possibly over and over and over again, because everybody can't handle that. You know what I'm saying? Because they'll tell you, you ain't got, this is a term, you ain't got over that yet. You need to just move on. It's been so-and-so years. You mean you still thinking about that? But here it is. Grief, Dr. Kiesel says, grief is as unique as your thumbprint. As your what? As your thumbprint. It's unique. Everybody has a thumbprint. So it's different, meaning that's different. It's different for me. It's different for you. We're going to carry it and deal with it in a different way. All right?
There's a
season ticket holder for the Dreams. And there's a lady that sits right next to me that her husband died 7 years ago. And I swear to you, I'm okay with it, but I swear to you, every game is something. I went and got me a hot dog like my husband would have done. She is still going through that grief process. And he had a seat as well, and she'd always bring something to sit in. And a couple of years ago, I said to her, you ever thought about asking one of your grandchildren or a neighbor, somebody that you're close to start coming to the game with you and sit in that seat? And now she's doing that this year, and that's a big step for her.
Wow.
That's a big step for her.
Wow. But see, I think what you did was you didn't dismiss what she was doing. You know, you didn't dismiss it. You may have chuckled about it in your head, like, well, why is she doing that? But I think you tried to understand it and recognize it. And once you do that and figure out an avenue, what can I say to this person? And also at the same time, asking God, what can I say to this person to help this person move through the process? Because there's one writer says, grief has to find its place. All right. So the fact that you were able to interject and find somebody else to fill that spot, and at the same time could have said that your husband would have loved for somebody to be in that seat, to enjoy what he enjoyed while y'all came, when you two came together to watch the game. So I think that's a beautiful, beautiful spot. So, but definitely support groups, self-care, writing, small steps for healing. But I think the most important thing is find a group that's a safe space and place where you can talk about your challenges, your pain, your loss, the very rawness, and that person is not uncomfortable if you say something odd or strange to them. All right, let's go to the next one. Professional support. I cannot express that enough. There's a young lady that's going to be doing our mental health video clip tomorrow morning. So she's already sent that in. Dr. Menendez, Diana. She and I are colleagues, and we're talking about doing a podcast together dealing with spirit and psychology, spiritual and psychology. And we was talking about the necessity of having both, of having practical help, psychological help, as well as spiritual help, and the value of that, and finding those professional support, and also providing those professional support that doesn't go against your own belief system. I want to repeat that because you have to be careful and cautious of that as well. You want to find people who are lined up with your values, right? Because there are others that are out there that may go polar opposite, and you're sitting there like, what did you just say? And so you want to make sure that they line up with your values. All right, who's next? Let's go next. Listening without judgment, offering practical help. How can you help people? Avoiding cliches like they're in a better place. That bothers me. They are in a better place. What does that look like to you? They are in a better place. Have y'all heard that when somebody died? What does a better place look like? They don't know. All right. You said heaven? But is everybody going to heaven? Just as long as everybody talk about heaven, they ain't going to heaven. All right. So notice that last statement. What does it mean? What does it mean to be present with empathy? Because there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. What does it mean to be present with empathy?
Sometimes you're sitting there saying nothing.
Okay, sitting there saying nothing. What else?
Don't know.
You don't know? All right. Anyone else? Get a feel for their emotions. Anybody else? All right, so here's a food for thought. Listening to their story or their narratives, all right, without discounting their experiences. Listening to their story or their narrative without discounting their story or their experiences, all right, and never being discounting their experiences. Saying, so for example, some people says walking in their shoes. So but the reality is all you can do is listen to their story. Listen to their story, acknowledge their story, realize that they do have a story, but not become judgmental of that story.
My situation is that you have someone that's grieving, and they feel comfortable with bringing it to you. Their grief becomes your grief, and now you feel like you want to dump because they dumping it on you, and you're not the person to handle it. So you don't want to feel like you discounting them or anything. But now it's their grief or depression may make you have grief and depression, and all you was trying to do was be this support person.
Boundaries. So here it is. So here's the way you could say to that person, you know what? I appreciate you trusting me with your pain and your hurts and all that. But even so, if a person is understanding this, but you also got to establish boundaries. Boundaries, because now you can be encroaching upon you and your own emotional well-being, right? But you have to establish them. And if they are a friend, they will respect that. If they were just an associate, they won't respect it, right? But you have to say to them, I appreciate you sharing this with me, and I value that you're talking to me about this situation, about your issues and your challenges and your truths, but unfortunately, I don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to handle all of this. So I would encourage you to seek further help and trusted help. And I have some recommendations. And if they are bothered by that, that's not a friend.
Maybe not so much they're not a friend, they're just in this period of serious grief. And that if you've been that person, or you that person that they really trust in, they maybe just can't separate. So it's not that they don't want you, that you're not their friend. It's just that now you may have become that comfort for them. So, and I agree that you have to set boundaries and things, but there's also this trying to get them to that point to understand that when they're in that period, it's a challenge.
So,
You just can't help. I mean, it's a fact. There can be people in your family, your best friend. Some people you just can't help. You have to just relinquish that and let somebody else do it.
right, you got to know when it's time to let it go to the next stage. Sometime, and then there are appropriate times to pull off the Band-Aid.
Well, I got a 2 a.m. phone call, and I answered the call, and the person on the other end had lost her sister, and so she said she felt comfortable calling me. She just needed somebody to talk to, but not so much of me answering her question, just listening to what she had to say. So my thing is, God won't put more on you than you can bear. And I think God used me at that particular time because he gave me words to say to her, encouraging words, because it was not my own, it was a divine intervention. And so my thing is, most of the time when people reach out to you, they trust you, and so they know that you're a serious person, and so they know that I won't be judgmental. So she just felt free to call me at 2 a.m. So I answered that call, and that's what was on the other end.
And that's fine, but at the same time, there are certain people who they only have this much bandwidth. I can do it to this point, but I can't do it to this point. And I can't do it to this point. That's why when I go back to professional support, it gets to a place where professional support has to be involved and has to be engaged, and that person has to be willing to accept that. And you have to be friend enough to say to them, hey, listen, I appreciate, I value, I'm supportive, I love you, but listen, this is all I can do at this given point in time. I think your time would be much better spent talking to somebody on a professional level because you are borderline depressed and you're going deeper into depression. And I don't want you to get to a place where I am unprofessional. I'm not professional enough to help you. And now you're grappling with suicide ideation. And I don't know nothing about that. And so when you understand you're outside of your scope and outside of your area of expertise, defer. You do more help for that individual when you do that. You do more harm by keep placating to them. Oh, I don't want to let you go. You're my friend. You're my friend. You're my friend. But no, you need to stop it. You have a crucial conversation with them. Say, this is as far as I can go.
Yeah, there are limitations.
Right. Yep. All right, let's go to the next one. Yes.
I was just listening to what everybody was saying, and we're talking about adults, children, that have that same issue. I work with the kids in after school. I have met 2 children that lost their parents. One of them lost her mom after I met her at school. And these are all elementary, 6th grade back to pre-K. The little girl that lost her mother, she came to me and she asked me, could she have a hug? And I said, sure. I said, what's wrong? And she told me that her mother died. And I said, you can have all the hugs you want. I said, I understand. I said, do you know I lost my mom too? And she said, you did? I said, yes. I said, it hurts. And she said, it hurts me. I miss my mom. And from that day, she would come to me some days, and they took her a counselor, and she would say, I need a hug. And I just give her a hug, and she give her a hug, and she go on. Then there's this little boy. I think when he was about 4 or 5, his mom, he's in a car with his mom in an accident, and she was killed in that car. He came to me and just said, Miss Gordon, somebody was mean to him in the classroom that day. And I said, you should have told the teacher. I said, I'm not here. I said, what did he do to you? And he said, your mama dead. You don't have her mama. I said, he said, to you? He said, yes. I said, well, he's young, just like you, and he don't know what to say. And I explained to him that my mom had passed too, and I knew how he felt. And he's still in the school where I am, but I don't think he's had any counseling.
Well, see, that's my point. That's my point. A lot of times children, we adults bypass the kids. Oh, they're young, they'll bounce back, they'll get over it, they're young, they'll get through it. But the reality is that they need help as well. All right, so let's do this real quickly. Grief and mental health can anticipate mental health challenges, persistent sadness, sleep issues, anxiety. Seek help early, as soon as it happens. All right, let's go to the next one. Grief in the workplace. I think we talked about that a little bit, about being identified with the workplace, your role and your capacity, to find out suddenly that you're going to be, the place is going out of business, or there's a reduction in force like they're doing in the federal government. All those kind of things, it can cause huge problems as it relates to that, and workplace performance and things of that nature that's associated with that, not performing well on the job and not living up to that expectation on the job and going through that whole grieving process as well. Let's go to the next one. Grief and physical health. Again, I think we talked about that. Fatigue, headaches, prioritize regular checkups and self-care. Stress, strokes, heart attacks. All of those things come together. Migraine headaches that you can't get rid of. All right, let's go to the next one. Grief and identity, back again, self-reflection, new roles, meaning making, I think Dr. Kiesler talks about that, a person, when that person no longer has any sense of purpose or no sense of meaning, trying to discover and understand the why of their existence, reframing, reaffirming that meaning. What does that look like for me now? Who am I? Who will I be? This is what I should have been at this particular time. So give me an example. A lady that I met that talked about her husband dying. I think they had been married like 23 years. And she talked about having the house, the home, and all this kind of stuff. They had planned for vacations and things of that nature, and all of that now is gone. So she's having to rediscover, this was here recently, of who she is on this new journey and new chapter in life. Let's go to the next one. Memorializing. I like this one. Let me give you an example of a lady that I'm counseling now that lost her son, was 36 years of age. And these are rituals, memories book. One of the things I previously did in Baltimore was called the last mile, and what we would do at the end of the year, we would have this candlelight visual at the end of the year, and everybody that had lost a loved one within that year, we would have a candle that represented that person that had died, and we would have the ushers and some of the kids, and we would call out the names of those who had died. And we did that at the end of the year, kind of memorialize and kind of go through that process. Another way of doing it is there's a young lady I was sharing with you about, her son, 36 years of age, and she's dealing with complicated grief. She cannot, it is emotionally painful for her and intense. He was 36 years of age, but this guy, her son, was a sports fanatic, right? And so he had all types of jerseys and everything else you can think about. And so what she did was she talked to a colleague of mine that was good with knitting and fabrics and all that kind of stuff, and she was able to take pieces of all those fabrics and cut them and put them together and pull together a huge quilt with all the things that he had, all the different colors and what have you. So she uses that as a way of comfort. So that was a way of memorializing. I've seen the tree being planted in a person's backyard, or a rose bush, or whatever flower that they loved or enjoy, and they would use that. This was a recommendation I made to a family that was traveling back between Georgia and South Carolina, and the siblings were spread at different places. And she was talking about, my mom's died, nobody's going to come back together as a family, And so I just kind of thought about it out of the blue. I said, have you ever thought about planting a tree and allow the tree to become the center place where y'all come back together for like family gatherings? And you guys go around it, kind of stand around the tree and kind of remember the things that your mom talked about, shared about, and you engage with. And so it's a place, it's kind of like a rallying point, all right? Let's go to the next one. Resilience and post-traumatic growth, growth through adversity, discovering deeper meaning, embracing change with hope, being able to embrace change. Change is inevitable, and that's what you have to do when it's time for us to move forward, even after the death or the loss or the transition of life. Let's go to the next one. Grief and faith and spirituality. We've talked about that. I think about the passage of Scripture when we talked about the illustration of Ruth. We talked about the illustration of Job and the death. And one of the illustrations that we did not talk about was the matter of, let me make sure I have this, David. So if you have your Bibles, turn with me real quickly to 2 Samuel chapter 12. And this is the death of David's son. 2 Samuel chapter 12, and let's look at verse number 15. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse number 15. I want you to take a close look at how David handled this death, all right? Look at verse number 15. It says, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bore to David and became ill. David therefore pleaded with God for the child. So you see God's interaction in his prayer to God, all right? And David fasted and went in and laid all night on the ground. So David does everything that, just kind of see yourself in that place. You prayed to God about an individual. Please, God, give them another opportunity. Give them another shot. Give them another chance. I'm praying. I'm interacting with God. All right, let's pick up and let's continue to read verse number 17. So the elders of the house arose and went to him to raise him up from the ground, but he would not, nor did he eat food with them. Knows that? No appetite. All right. Then on the seventh day it came to pass that the child died. Does everybody see that? This is after him praying to God, after him doing the rituals and the practices before God. There's a loss of appetite. All of that, we see that. All right? It says, and the servants of David were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. Y'all see that again? So some of these scenes are familiar. You're starting to see some of the same thing, right? For they said, indeed, while the child was alive, we spoke to him, and he would not heed our voice. How can we tell him that the child is dead? He may do some harm to us or to himself. All right? Verse 19, when David saw that his servants were whispering, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said to his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he is dead. So David arose from the ground, washed and anointed himself, and changed his clothes. Washed and anointed himself and changed his clothes. Washed and anointed himself and changed his clothes. And he went into the house of the Lord and worshiped. He went back to church. Then he went to his own house, and when he requested, they set food before him, and he ate. He stopped eating, but now he was eating again. Then his servant said to him, what is this that you have, right, done? You fasted and wept for the child while he was alive, but when the child died, you arose and ate food. Still criticism. So no matter how you handle it. Verse 22, he said, while the child was alive, I fasted and wept. He said, I did everything I could do. Who cannot tell whether the Lord will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he's dead. Why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. Great passage for you and your family. A great passage for you and your family. Great examples on how to handle it. I did everything that I could. I prayed, I fasted, I got before God, I separated, and I still felt some criticism. In the midst of all of this, I fast, I don't fast, you criticize me. All right, let's go to the next one. So hold that passage. Grief in the digital age. Today's digital age, grieving extends beyond physical spaces. Social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram have become venues for online memorials, allowing individuals to share tributes and memories, fostering communal mourning. And one of the, I'm not a big, I'm 60, I'm 70-30 on social media, but it has its pluses and has its minuses. But one of the things I do love about it, if there's a memory out there, how it can, a year later, that photo comes back, a person that may have been meaning, a person that had great meaning in your life, and memories that you put out. So it can be a good place for memories and opportunities as well. All right, go to the next one. Case study. This is just examples of diverse grief experiences, sudden loss of a spouse, navigating both the emotional turmoil and the practical challenges. Next case study, a person experiencing grief after the job loss, dealing with identity. Identity is a big thing. My job was my identity. That's who I am. All right, let's go to the next one. Helping a grieving friend, here it is. Listen actively, avoid offering solutions, just be present. Small, consistent acts of care often mean more than perfect words. Your presence is the true gift. All right, let's go to the next one. The new normal. Redefining our identity, creating new routines, all right, is the pathway. Finding a new normal. Dr. Kiesler talks about that in the loss of his own son, is trying to find the new normal without his son. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Messages from survivors. You're not alone. Many have faced deep loss and found strength over time. These real messages remind us that healing is possible and connection brings hope. Let their voices guide and uplift the journey through grief. Go to the next one. Reach out to hotlines, encouragement, and resources. That's there. You're not alone. Help is available when they're ready to seek. Go to the next one. All right. Last one, closing reflection. Grief reflects the depth of our love. Though painful, it honors what was lost. Grief is the price of love. I like that part. I got a picture on that one. Grief is the price of love. Okay? And love is always worth it. Let this be a beginning, a journey toward healing, growth, and peace. All right? All right, so hopefully this has been helpful and advantageous for you, at least called you to think and rethink about the area of grief and loss. All right? Any closing thoughts before we go?
Man, he and I was thinking after something, 15 years ago, and he moved to Earth, and had to move to Memphis every year ago. And he passed about 3 years ago. And we so excited to look at it. So I can't get it on my mind. I had to look at the house, look at it, and everything. It's hard for me to say, okay, I lost him, and he's gone.
Yeah, and I think that's when you have friendships that have lasted over years, it's one of those areas, especially if you didn't get a chance to have kind of final words or a closing spot, it becomes a challenge for you as well. But I do think it's important, even come to today, maybe a place or source of help and assistance in that area. Yeah, absolutely.
Touch on the children too, dealing with grief, it's hard for children to also deal with divorce.
Yeah.
Especially when it seems like they want to be with this parent, and they end up being with this parent, and maybe the parent they want to be with goes and it's a whole new family and everything, that a lot of children, have big problems that they don't do it.
Yeah, and sometimes they never get over it or get through it. But I do believe back again that part, if those individuals could actually seek some kind of counseling, I mean, it would turn the light bulb on for them and help them to turn the pages and move to another place and maybe even come back and regroup as it relates to that relationship with not only that the new family that may be involved with that parent's life. So I think it's always possible, but I still believe that key part is always going to be counseling. If somehow or another we can encourage that, offer that, or provide that, or lead those persons in that area, I think we'll be better for it. All right? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Well, my problem with grief is, like, my mom has been gone more than 30 years, but every time, I bring up a subject and try to talk about her, I start crying. But, my life is going on, and because after she passed, the next Mother's Day came around, I was in the garden and was mad and angry, but then I had to pull myself together and realize that, well, I am a mother, so, so I had to, readjust. But now, since my husband passed, I've reduced and going on with my life. But the thing was with him is that, like, I keep the pictures of him all around and everything. And so, when certain people come home to my house, they think that I should take the pictures down and like I'm immortalizing it. But I have gone on with my life.
So how long has it been since your husband?
July of 22.
22. Okay. Well, that hasn't been that very long. So real quickly, just a moment, everybody. Real quickly, that hasn't been that long. So I don't see it as bad. But I do believe that you will need to, navigate and process your emotions as it relates to the death and the loss. But in time, you may be able to, separate from some of those attachments because they become attachments. I got another guy that is talking about removing furniture that was in his house because it's too much of a reminder of his spouse. But he's having the biggest problem. He's having the hardest time taking the furniture out of the house. So you have to have the support. You have to have the support. You have to have the people who don't demean what you're doing. That's the most important thing. You got to have people who don't demean it, that are supportive of you and helping you to kind of navigate that process. Even if it's nothing more than taking a picture down a year. Could we put the picture here in a photo album, what have you, and take your time to go through that process with that and getting the support that you need.
And then I have to remind myself, like I would say, coming out of this, coming out of that. And so I would have to just stop, including his name in conversations because I think that's annoying to me.
Well,
It can be, but at the same time, you got to process your own grief. You can't discount or dismiss people's relationships that they've had for years and they're accustomed to those folks being around. It's so natural to kind of call those names out. And so people can say to you, just like Sister Hannah said to this young lady that sat beside her, she didn't say what she said to her immediately, right? It took a minute, that she's in a good place. This may be the appropriate time that I can say what I need to say. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
It's so personal. It's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
My mother passed away in 2016, and I am an only child, and we were very close. I remember she was just very possessive of me. So it was like, and for a number of years, I watched her passing away, and there was nothing I could do. To me, that was the hardest part. I'm watching her, knowing that she was just dwindling it away, and there was nothing I could do. Even though she said to me, I'm ready to go, and I am dying. And we had conversations about what she wanted me to do when she was gone. And even now, and it's been that long, some days it's very difficult for me. I'm in that place where she's so present in my life that it's just like, okay, mother, you've got to let me go. You can't keep doing this to me. And that is, I don't know that there are any terms or words that can really describe what grief is for everybody.
Yeah. It is exactly what I said.
Dr. Keisha said that is as unique as your thumbprint. All of us have a fingerprints. It's different. It's different. But let me give you a statement a woman said to me that she was talking about the sharpness of death, how painful it can be. But she said, but you know what, Reverend? Over the years, God has softened the edges. And I thought that was one of the most classic statements that I've heard. Because she describes it being sharp first, but she says through God and prayer, and she said, I'm talking about intentional. I ain't talking about just saying these words. She says, but intentionally through God, he has softened the edges. And the fact that she was sitting in my office and we were having a conversation helped as well. Yes, ma'am.
With grief with my father, my dad was a businessman. He had his own business, and when he died, I went home, he had a massive heart attack, and I got involved in, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and he had a neighborhood bar like Cheers, you know what I mean? And I got home, and my intent was to go down there and get what was in the safe and that. But when I opened the door, here come all these people talking about my dad, and I started working. I worked in that bar probably about 6-8 months before I sold it. But I had people come from Atlanta down there because they were just so sure I was going to drink. they were just so sure that you know, I was going to stop my recovery. I might have had about 6, 7 years, I don't remember. But I didn't realize till 7, 8 months later, I was coming back to Atlanta. That was the first time I had cried. That was part of my grief, running that club, you know, because that's what my dad did all my life. He was a club owner. And I never intend to run this place, but that's what happened. I went in there, opened the doors, and people just started coming in talking about my dad, but that was a part of my grief process. And one Sunday, I was headed back to Atlanta, and I'll never forget it. I ended up in church. It was church here, right here. I had on blue jeans and a cap, and I don't know nothing happened. I cried the whole time, but that was my first time crying. So grief, you don't ever know when it's coming.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you don't know how it's coming.
Yeah.
You just got to be willing to go through the process.
And embrace it.
And embrace it.
Embrace it, yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? All right, so we appreciate the time. Hopefully this has been beneficial and helpful. Yep. So let's have a word of prayer. And I think we will transition from today. There will be a mental health clip on tomorrow morning, and then there will be a message driven around mental health as well as we close out the month, and also Memorial Day weekend, and definitely remembering most especially African-American men and women who were instrumental in our nation's freedom. All right? So let us go to the Lord in prayer together. God, our Father, we're just so thankful for this day, Master. We're thankful for your darling Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for the privilege and the honor to talk, to discuss, to dialogue, to engage, to hear stories, to hear journeys, to hear moments of honesty and truthfulness and vulnerability and transparency. Thank you, oh God, for those who are willing to share, to talk and discuss, and for our time together. We ask that you bless us and give us strength and give us encouragement. Thank you for this day and all that you do. And God, we pray for those who may be traveling and those who may be traveling for the rest of this weekend to be with family and friends. We're praying as well, God, for the food that has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. God, we're thankful for the team that prepared the food as well. We ask that you bless this moment and the church that we are part of. Help us to grow and to reach more people for the cause of Christ. It's in your darling Son, Jesus Christ's name we do pray. Amen. Amen.
If you enjoy this program, call us right now, 404-688-6680, or send an email to info@mtpleasantatl.org. Mount Pleasant Baptist Church is a congregation full of life and love for everybody. Would you consider sowing an offering? Whatever God lays on your heart to give would be a blessing to the ministry. Thank you for your support. Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia.